4 new detachments, Tzeentch demons. Let's see what we're working with. Hello YouTube, my name is Jack. Welcome back to Barnyard Wargaming, and today we are reviewing the first of 4 new demon detachments. As you may know, I am a bit of a demon connoisseur and I do play a lot of demons on this channel. I'm also currently rank 1 on the ITC circuit for the South Pacific, so I do know my way around demons. I have a pretty decent win rate with them, and now we get to look at the 4 new detachments. Now I will say as a bit of a disclaimer, because I am Australian, the new detachments came out at 11 PM. I went to sleep at 2 AM and woke up at 7 AM. It is now about 10 AM. So I haven't had a lot of time to look at these new detachments. I have not played a game with them yet, and I don't know the best list or the best detachment or the best competitive play just yet. I need a lot more practice before getting all the reps in. Today we'll be covering Tzeentch demons, but I will go over the 3 other gods as well in the coming days. That also being said, if you enjoy these videos, please like and subscribe down below. It's free to do so. The Discord's also free to join, and we also have a Patreon and memberships here on YouTube as well. Consider becoming a member to get members only content and also help me out in the creation of more videos like this one. So let's start off with the detachment rule. Now, what do you give up when you run any of these 4 detachments over the base detachment? The base detachment for Chaos Demons allows you to have that 6-inch deep strike in Shadow of Chaos. Now, you still get Shadow of Chaos in all 4 of these detachments. You're gonna be at +1 to your battle shock tests, and if you pass, you heal D3 models if it's battle line, or D3 wounds if it's not. This was never great for something like Tzeentch because the base detachment gave you 6-inch deep strike and charge, which you didn't really care about anyway because you had shooting. It was good for things like 3-inch deep strike, which is now gone, with stratagems, but nowadays it's actually not so good. So this new detachment for Tzeentch is a massive upgrade. In lieu of the 6-inch deep strike, you're gonna get a rule called Fates in Flux. What does this do? It essentially gives you 3 free re-rolls for a variety of different things every turn, and you can also use it to buff some of your stratagems. Every time you burn one of these re-rolls, you're gonna give it to your opponent, and then your opponent is gonna wanna give them back. Now, they can't use it for quite as many things as you can, but they can still do hits, wounds, saves, etc, etc. Some really good rerolls. Now, why not just be greedy and keep all the rerolls for yourself? Well, the Tzeentch player wants to burn these rerolls on their stratagems and also to move around the board and things like that, and the other player doesn't want to have them because in the Tzeentch player's command phase, if the other player has a reroll available, the Tzeentch player will gain an additional reroll. So you can stack these rerolls up throughout the game. Now, you might be thinking at first glance, well, the Tzeentch player is then going to burn all 3 rerolls, give them to their opponent, and their opponent's just going to burn all 3 rerolls and give them straight back every single turn. What's the point? You're just giving your opponent 3 free rerolls every turn, but it's actually a little bit more complex than that. Instead of giving all of them back, a very smart opponent is actually going to hold all of them. They're going to hold all of the rerolls because that way you don't get any rerolls in return. They have their army rule just as normal, and instead of generating 3 of these rerolls every turn, you're going to generate 1 because you're going to get 1 additional reroll because your opponent has re-rolls available to them. And that means at the end of the game in turn 4 or turn 5, they're gonna have like 5, 6, 7 re-rolls available to them, which they can then give all back in 1 hit. Now this leads us over to the first enhancement, Inescapable Eye. And what this does, for 10 points, you basically double down on the rule that says you gain an additional re-roll, a flux point, if your opponent has any at the start of your command phase. The reason why you would want to take this is so that you can't just let your opponent keep all the rerolls for the whole game and then you only get 1 a turn. I'd say it's mandatory if you want to be spending your stratagems with flux points and having those rerolls available to you. Now the next one is called Infernal Puppeteer. This enhancement is a must-have, and you're gonna see basically a Lord of Change with the Rod of Sorcery and their main shooting attacks with Infernal Puppeteer every single time this detachment is run. What it does is it allows you to shoot your Lord of Change through another model. And the best way that you can do this is you basically have a unit of pink horrors or a unit of blue horrors, and you string out this entire unit so that one end is within 9 inches of your Lord of Change. Not even needs to be visible, it can just be 9 inches away. And then you have the other end with a tiny little blue horror seeing whatever it wants to see. And you measure all of your shooting from the end blue horror, which means if this one blue horror can see your entire enemy unit, you're not gonna get cover and your Lord of Change is going to shoot through this guy, hitting on 2s every single turn. Now you might be thinking that's insane because you might be used to the old Lord of Change with the Ever Save. Remember, this Lord of Change doesn't get that many strength bonuses. It gives itself +1 strength to its weapons, and if you're ignoring cover with this little blue horror, it's still going to be at AP 2 and AP 1. There is a stratagem we'll get to in a second which can buff it, but it's quite expensive. Now let's get on to the last 2 enhancements. First up is Neverblade. Neverblade for 20 points basically makes your Lord of Change +2 strength, you get +1 attack, you get +1 AP, and you get +1 to your hit rolls in melee. This is probably best used on a Lord of Change with the sword. That means you're gonna get 9 attacks at varying strengths, but lots of AP, hitting on 2s now, and all of them are gonna be at 3 damage. The problem here is he does not give himself +1 strength in melee from his aura, and also you might just be tempted to take something like a Bloodthirster, even in this detachment, and then just run with that to kill stuff. You could also give this to your Demon Prince and make him very, very fighty. Essentially, once per game, he'll get 3 extra attacks, and then he gets the +2 strength, the +1 AP, the +1 attack, and he can have sustained hits as well. He can have a lot of attacks at 3 damage. Now the last one is called Improbable Shield, and for 30 points it gives you an aura of 4 at Feel No Pain against psychic attacks and against mortal wounds. Now this also works against devastating wounds because dev wounds are mortal wounds. I think this one is going to be quite mixed. If you're going to be taking Infernal Puppeteer every game, and you're also going to be taking Inescapable Eye, you can only actually have 1 more enhancement because you are capped at 3 enhancements. That means if you either want Neverblade or you can take the Shield. The shield would be very good for castling and having all of your models more immune to mortal wounds, especially seeing as people like to kill pink horrors and blue horrors with things like grenades and tank shock because they don't split, and then if you wipe the rest of the unit, you cannot revive. You cannot split if your unit is one shot. So it means that these horror units are a bit more survivable. But what you could also do instead of taking horrors is you could take screamers and they move way further. You can have a unit of 6 of them and they're really tanky, and you can use your Lord of Change with Infernal Puppeteer to shoot through those instead, which means that the mortal wound protection is less good, and also the Neverblade enhancement for the melee is just a bit better in my mind. Now obviously this is my opinion and you can definitely take the shield, but for 30 points it seems a little expensive. Now let's get on to the stratagems. Now the stratagems for this detachment are really good, which means that you're going to want a lot of CP. Sadly, the only way to generate CP in Demons is Kairos can give you an extra CP when you spend stratagems on units nearby, but you have to roll higher than the battle round number, which is quite difficult later in the game. The first stratagem that we have is Impossible Eclipse. What this does is you pay a command point and you can then put either your enemy's deployment zone or no man's land in shadow. Now, if you spend a flux point on top of this, you can put both in shadow. Now you might be thinking, that's great, 6-inch deep strike everywhere, but no, you don't have that anymore. It's not bad, but for a CP, you don't really need shadow in this detachment. You already have shadow from your Lords of Change. Everything within 6 of them is going to be shadow anyway, so do you really need to pay a CP to have shadow everywhere? Not really. Now we get to one of the best stratagems there is for demons. This is the core stratagem for this army, Pyrogenesis. It basically is in shooting or fight phase, you can add 3 to the strength of your weapon and +1 AP. It's basically a much better version of Draft of Terror from the core detachment, which gave you +1 AP and full rerolls to wound if the enemy was battle shocked. Now you can give this to your Demon Prince in melee to make him strength 13 at 3 damage flat, pretty good. You can give it to your Infernal Puppeteer Lord of Change from sitting behind the wall, make all of his guns strength, I think 12 and 13. It's pretty insane. But again, for 2 command points, it's hefty. If you're gonna be using this every single turn on your Lord of Change, that means you don't get any other stratagems at all unless you're refunding some stuff through discarding cards or through Kairos. It's very, very expensive. And there's also no way to give free strats or reduce the cost of this in any way. You can also have Flamers land within 6 inches of a Lord of Change from Deep Strike, and then all of a sudden pay 2 CP, and they're gonna be strength 8 at AP 2, and then ignoring all of the enemy's cover saves as well. It's pretty good. The next one is Flickering Reality, and it means that in the fight phase, it's a defensive stratagem where when the opponent starts to attack one of your units, you can pay a command point and you roll a dice. You can then pay a flux point if you want to re-roll this dice. And whatever you roll, whatever number that you get, exactly that number, not plus or minus, just that number, your opponent misses their attacks on that number. So if you roll a 6, all of their 6s to hit miss, including lethals and sustained. Could be really good against armies like Chaos Space Marines that have lots of lethals and sustained hits. But essentially, this is going to be -1 to hit, because making Marines go from 3s to 4s to hit, you're basically saying, okay, well, if I roll a 5, you only hit me on 3s, 4s, and 6s. It's like -1 to hit for most of the time. And then on top of that, you can sometimes roll a 6 to turn off all your sustains and lethals, which is pretty damn good. But remember, it's 5 phase only. And also every single one of these new demon detachments got a 1 CP move through walls stratagem. For Tzeentch, this is Fate-Born Nightmares. Essentially, in the movement phase or the charge phase, you can have any of your units move through terrain for a single command point. It's not so good for Tzeentch because everything is so fast, but for things like a Lord of Change that wants to move through a wall, or maybe a Burning Chariot, or a Soul Grinder, it could be pretty fun. There's 1 CP for Fickle Fire, which means that you can shoot into engagement range with an enemy unit. So instead of having your Lord of Change fall back, you can just shoot the things at your feet, and then other Lords of Change can also shoot into the combat that you are also in. The downside is for every model that you kill on a 5+, you're going to be taking mortals yourself. It's not so bad, and it does give you a way to shoot things at your feet instead of falling back and doing nothing, or shooting something locked in combat with a gigantic unit of blue horrors and pink horrors, or screamers. If you don't want them to fall back but you want them to stay in melee, you can then just shoot into the combat. Pretty fun stratagem. It makes bogging Tzeentch units a whole lot more difficult. And the last one that we have is Delirium Unmade. Now this one is uppy downy. It's the same as what we used to have in the base detachment. You pick a unit and that unit can leave the table and then return via deep strike in the next turn, including on turn 1, which is really, really nice. Alternatively, you can also pay a flux point and you can pick 2 units to leave the table, including units that are within engagement range. This means that you can never be bogged, because for 1 command point, you can have 2 of your units just leave the board. And this also includes any units that are even not within your shadow. You don't need to have shadow everywhere. You can just have the board covered in things like pink horrors and screamers, and then just, if you want them to not be in melee anymore, just pay a flux point and then 2 of them leave the board. It's really powerful. And it's also the only new detachment that has uppy downy. On top of this, you can also target 2 units within 6 inches of Kairos. I could be wrong on this because basically you're targeting 2 different units with the same effect. So you might not be able to roll 2 dice to keep your CP with Kairos, but rules as written, potentially you might be able to have 2 units within 6 of Kairos and roll 2 dice to try and get a result higher than the battle round number, so that you can uppy downy these 2 units and you keep your CP at the same time. Overall, it's a very fun detachment, and I've had a lot of competitive players reach out to me already saying this is going to be the new competitive meta. Tzeentch demons are looking really strong. You've got a Lord of Change that can't be shot and he can just shoot anything he wants all game. You've got a Demon Prince that can just melee stuff to death, and he just moves all over the board. Uppy downies from melee as well. There's lots of different play you can do. Lots of scoring, lots of shooting, but I'm not so convinced. Again, Tzeentch demons are a little bit on the expensive side and don't have too much damage. There was that recent change to Screamers that means that they now have anti-monster, anti-vehicle 4-up, and they hit on 3s, but there really isn't too much going on with this army in terms of the damage output. Everything is D3 damage or 2 damage. There's no like high damage weaponry unless you're taking Soul Grinders with Warp Gaze, which can then pay a CP to move through walls, but all your stratagems are really good. Some of them, like Pyrogenesis, are 2 CP. Without a whole bunch of free stratagem use and ways to generate CP, you might be finding that you run out of CP a lot. Is it the new competitive meta? In my eyes, I don't think so. I think some of the other detachments also have a lot of play. In terms of the build that I would be looking for, if you're gonna try this army out yourself and you're gonna be playing the Tzeentch detachment a lot, I would definitely be going with a Lord of Change behind the wall with Infernal Puppeteer. I'd either run a Lord of Change or a Demon Prince with the Blade to make them super punchy in melee, And then I would not run the bubble, I'd run Inescapable Eye, just so that your opponent can't force you to only have one reroll every single turn. I'd probably have 3 units of 6 Screamers. And I'd probably string these out in a really, really long line so you can have Infernal Puppeteer activate and kill everything that you want. And then they can also charge in the charge phase and just bog units, deal tons of damage. They're anti-monster, anti-vehicle 4-up. So you'd be looking at 18 Screamers, no Fate Skimmers, a Lord of Change, maybe a second Lord of Change or a Demon Prince, and Kairos. Whatever else you can fit on top of that is just a bonus. Flamers for doing actions and secondaries, like units of 3-mans that you can just uppy downy with Kairos. And then maybe you have a big Flamer brick and you just 2 CP, strength 8, here's all my shooting. You could do that too. It's your choice. Let me know what you think of this detachment in the comments down below. I'm of course going to be doing videos for the other 3 gods when they come out. And again, I haven't even played a single game with this army yet. So you will probably find something that I haven't found just yet, but this is just from what my brain can see after playing lots and lots of demons. I hope that you really enjoy this new detachment. And if you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. We also have Patreon, we have memberships. The Discord is free to join down below. It would really help us out. And also if you really like these Tzeentch models, we actually do commission painting as well. And you can get these Tzeentch models just like these ones, commission painted by my lovely partner, Adela. All the links for all of that will be also down in the description down below. With that said, at the end of this video you're watching right now, if you're watching it on release, we're going to be playing a demon game with this exact detachment on stream. So join in, get involved, come say hi, and let me know what you think. With that said and done, I will see you all in the next video. Peace out. Thanks for watching.